Hello, it's Willie from the Ozarks. We're ready for our November 28th lesson in A Course in Miracles workbook for students. Out of the original edition, lesson 332. Fear binds the world. Forgiveness sets it free. I love that. Fear binds the world. Forgiveness sets it free. So say that to you over and over today. Fear binds the world, forgiveness sets it free. You know, one of the things when you go into your meditation, if you're having kind of a bad day, you're having bad hair day, I heard it called. Anyway, if you're having kind of things just you kind of seeing things askew, a little not quite the way that the Christ in you is seeing things. I tell you what I do a lot of times is I just say the lesson over and over in my meditation. If I can't get myself focused, I'll just say the lesson over and over to myself. Fear binds the world. Forgiveness sets it free. Fear binds the world. Forgiveness sets it free. And just, quietly, you don't have to say it out loud, but say it quietly. I mean, you can say it out loud. But what I'm saying is that the goal is not necessarily to do that. That's not really what we're needing to do in our meditations. But matter of fact, we want to say it maybe once, have the idea in our mind, and then be open for what God has to teach you for the day. But sometimes you just, these things are nice to be able to use as a helping you to come to your senses. And I don't know how many times they've brought me to my senses, just saying the lesson affirmation over and over. Fear binds the world, forgiveness sets it free. The ego makes illusions. Truth undoes its evil dreams by shining them away. Truth never makes attack. It merely is, and by its presence is the mind recalled from fantasies, awakening to the real. Forgiveness bids this presence enter in and take its rightful place within the mind. Without forgiveness is the mind in chains, believing in its own futility. Yet with forgiveness does the light shine through the dream of darkness, offering it hope and giving it the means to realize the freedom that is its inheritance. And the prayer says, we would not bind the world again today. Fear holds it prisoner, and yet your love has given us the means to set it free. Father, we would release it now, for as we offer freedom, it is given us, and we would not remain as prisoners while you hold out our freedom unto us. Fear binds the world, forgiveness sets it free. All right, let's take a look now in our text reading. We're ready in chapter 9. We're ready for chapter 9, section 11, the denial of God. I think that's where we're at. Let's make sure. No, that may not be where we're at. Magic versus miracles is where we're at. Section 10. All right. Magic versus miracles. And just a kind of a quick, I don't want people that practice magic in a sacred way to feel offended. What I want you to do is recognize that Jesus' definition of magic is when you try to affect a change in the universe and you don't have everybody's best interest at heart, where you have a divided, I want this little group or me to succeed, and I'm not really interested, or I'm not thinking about everybody. At least that's how I pick it up. I think that's probably the best definition that I've been able to kind of understand what he means. Because the words sometimes can trip us up, because some people might use the word miracles to mean something that it's not meant to be. And same thing for us that use the word that we have something we mean specifically by a miracle. We wouldn't want people to think that we were trying to say that miracles are to prove that God exists, and we do a show of magic, or those kind of miracles. That's not what miracles are, and that's not what we use the definition as. In the same way, we don't want to use the wrong word for magic either, okay? But magic versus miracles, I just wanted to give that. All magic is a form of reconciling the irreconcilable. Okay, so he's kind of defining his definition of magic right there in the beginning. All religion is the recognition that the irreconcilable cannot be reconciled. Sickness and perfection are irreconcilable. If God created you perfect, you are perfect. If you believe you can be sick, you have placed other gods before him. God is not at war with the God of sickness you made, but you are. He is the symbol of willing against God, and you are afraid of him because he cannot be reconciled with God's will. If you attack him, you will make him real to you. But if you refuse to worship him in whatever form he may appear to you, and wherever you think you see him, he will disappear into the nothingness out of which he was made. So just don't worship at the altar of the ego, or the, as he calls it, do not worship the God of sickness. 86. Reality can dawn only on an unclouded mind. Woo! Reality can dawn only on an unclouded mind. It is always there to be accepted, but its acceptance depends on your willingness to have it. To know reality must involve the willingness to judge unreality for what it is. This is the right use of selective perception. Okay, the right use for selective perception is to do what? To know reality. You must involve the to know reality must involve the willingness to judge unreality for what it is. And what is it? It's not real. It's unreality. To overlook nothingness is merely to judge it correctly. And because of your ability to evaluate it truly, to let it go. Remember, that's what forgiveness does. It just evaluates it that it's a nothing. So you're not really forgiving up something that you made real. I mean, if you made it real, well, now it's time to forgive it, which is to recognize that it is unreal. That's how we forgive, is realizing it must not be eternal or real, because it was a dream of separation, a dream of unlove. It can't be. Okay, so anyways, to know reality must involve the willingness to judge unreality for what it is. This is the right use of selective perception. To overlook nothingness is merely to judge it correctly, and because of your ability to evaluate it truly, to let it go. Knowledge cannot dawn on a mind full of illusions, because truth and illusions are irreconcilable. Truth is whole and cannot be known by part of a mind. Truth is whole and cannot be known by part of a mind. And that last sentence before that, knowledge cannot dawn on a mind full of illusions, because truth and illusions are irreconcilable. Truth is whole and cannot be known by part of a mind. 87. The sonship cannot be perceived as partly sick, because to perceive it that way is not to perceive it at all. The sonship cannot be perceived as partly sick, because to perceive it that way is not to perceive it at all. Oh my goodness, what have we done? Isn't it amazing? We've been seeing the sonship, the oneness, as partly sick, and in so we can't perceive it at all, because it's not that way. If the sonship is one, it is one in all respects. Oneness cannot be divided. If you perceive other gods, the god of sickness, if you perceive other gods, your mind is split, and you will not be able to limit the split, because the split is the sign that you have removed part of your mind from God's will. And this means it is out of control. Oh, God. To be out of control is to be out of reason. To be out of control, out of harmony with the one, with God's will, the only will there is, the only reality. To be out of control is to be out of reason. And the mind does become unreasonable without reason. That's another name for insanity. This is merely a matter of definition. By defining the mind wrongly, you perceive it as functioning wrongly. Oh my. Okay. Well, I'd like to keep going. Do we have time to go a little further? Let's read one more paragraph. God's laws will keep your minds at peace because peace is His will, and His laws are established to behold it. God's laws will keep your minds at peace because peace is His will, and His laws are established to uphold it. His are the laws of freedom, but yours are the laws of bondage. Since freedom and bondage are irreconcilable, their laws cannot be understood together. The laws of God work only for your good, and there are no other laws beside His. It reminds me of Romans 8:28. All things work together for good. And it goes on, but that's your first phrase of that. That's a beautiful passage in the Romans. And it just starts off, all things work together for good. The laws of God work only for your good, and there are no other laws beside His. Everything else is merely lawless and therefore chaotic. Yet God Himself has protected everything He created by His laws. Therefore, everything that is not under them does not exist. Laws of chaos are meaningless by definition. Creation is perfectly lawful, and the chaotic is without meaning because it is without God. You have given your peace to the gods you made, but they are not there to take it from you, and you're not able to give it to them. And you are not able to give it to them. So anyway, you are not free to give up freedom, but only to deny it. That's the next paragraph. We'll stop there, though. We'll be ready for paragraph 89. We'll start at 88 tomorrow, I'm sure. This is just such a beautiful realization. We don't want to bow down and worship the God of sickness. And, I did want to tell you a little bit about some of these things. I've got they still haven't sprouted yet, my buckwheat. But, here in the next day or two, I bet you we'll start getting some sprouts on those. And then I've got this is actually a real late summer squash that I grew right towards the end of the summer. So it's actually a summer squash. But I grew it late in the year, so it's kind of been keeping a little bit through the winter. All right, let's say I did want to tell you just a little bit about, we got enough time. Before we go back and read what is the ego out of our reading for today, in our lesson 332, fear binds the world, forgiveness sets it free. Before we read that, I wanted to tell you just a moment. I'm really getting kind of excited about the possibility of all that you can do with radishes. They're a brassica, and a relative of the cabbages. There's 3 varieties here that I found in this Baker's Creek catalog that I really am interested in growing these. The China Rose. We read the one yesterday was the Japanese Manawe daikon, real big radish. Well, I also wanted some real quick growing ones. And here's one. Here's one that's one of the oldest type of radishes, the China Rose. Very hardy fall-winter variety. Roots are about 5 inches long and a rose color. So I like the idea of having some kind of hardy ones for the winter. Yeah, I'll start those in the middle of the summer for next winter. Or maybe not in the middle of the summer, but as it starts winding down the garden and you got a little opening, you can put some of these that'll survive out throughout into the winter. Then there's also these D18 Jours, and it says it's an 18-day variety. 18 days, it says. Old French variety gives unbelievably rapid yields. The name translates as of 18 days. D18 Jours. Okay, so jours is days. I hope I'm pronouncing that right for you people that know French. And this radish will yield roots in 18 days under ideal conditions. Round to cylindrical roots are red with white tips. Flesh is crisp and juicy. A French breakfast type, often grown under glass for off-season production. Now I can see myself putting out a window over the little spot for those next, or even maybe even this winter. Maybe I could get some started. I'll have to give that some thought. And then these early scarlet globe. These are the ones that I usually plant. 22 day. The classic round red radish, crisp white flesh, is mild and tasty, has better warm weather tolerance than many. Okay, so so there's your early scarlet globe. You know, those other two that I just read you about, the D18 Jours and the China Rose, I likely will. Right now I'm just kind of daydream. That's what you do in the winter when you're gardening, you know, is you kind of take your winter and kind of daydream what plants and how you want your garden to look. And then you really get all energized when you start doing the work. And you've been sitting by the fire, staying warm and thinking about all these things you want to plant. Okay, now enough of that. Let's go to what is the ego. Under fear binds the world, forgiveness sets it free. And one last thing before we read that, I did want to tell you something out of the Bible, 13 and verse 34 and 35. A new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another, as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if you have love one to another. And you know, since our Course in Miracles came from the Bible, that's just a favorite Bible verse of mine, about Jesus reminding his disciples that everybody know that you're my disciples if you just love everybody. You know, see, love everybody the way I've loved you. You know, which is don't specialize people out and say, well, you're not going to give as much of my love. Everybody should get all God's love going through you. All right? All the holiness. You see the good in everyone. What is the ego? The ego is idolatry, the sign of limited and separated self, born in a body, doomed to suffer and end its life in death. It is the will that sees the will of God as enemy and takes a form in which it is denied. The ego is the proof that strength is weak and love is fearful. Life is really death, and what opposes God alone is true. Not. The ego is insane. In fear it stands beyond the everywhere, apart from all, in separation from the infinite. In its insanity it thinks it has become a victor over God himself. And in its terrible autonomy it sees the will of God has been destroyed. It dreams of punishment and trembles at the figures in its dreams, and its enemies who seek to murder it before it can ensure its safety by attacking them. Let's read that one again. It dreams of punishment and trembles at the figures in its dreams, its enemies who seek to murder it before it can ensure its safety by attacking them. The Son of God is egoless. Oh boy, yeah, that's where we want to be. What can he know of madness and the death of God when he abides in him? What can he know of sorrow and suffering? What can he know of sorrow and suffering when he lives in eternal joy? What can he know of fear and punishment, of sin and guilt, of hatred and attack, when all there is surrounding him is everlasting peace, forever conflict-free and undisturbed in deepest silence and tranquility? To know reality is not to see the ego and its thoughts, its works, its acts, its laws, and its beliefs, its dreams, its hopes, its plans for its salvation, and the cost belief in it entails. To know reality is not to see the ego and its thoughts. And then he goes on and talks about not just its thoughts, but to know reality is not to see the ego and its thoughts, or its works, its acts, its laws, its beliefs, its dreams, its hopes, its plans for its salvation, and the cost belief in it entails. So let's know reality and not see the ego and its thoughts, is what he's wanting us to see. In suffering, the price for faith in the ego is so immense that crucifixion of the Son of God is offered daily at its darkened shrine, and blood must flow before the altar where its sickly followers prepare to die. And what is another name for that ego we just learned in our text? The God of death. The God of sickness. Same thing. Okay, so you might think of it this way. Let's read that one again. In suffering, the price for faith in it is so immense that crucifixion of the Son of God is offered daily at its darkened shrine. At whose darkened shrine? The god of sickness. At its darkened shrine, and blood must flow before the altar where its sickly followers prepare to die. Oh, yet will one lily of forgiveness change the darkness into light. What's that lily of forgiveness? The recognition that it's a make-believe, that it's an illusion, that it isn't even real. If it's not speaking for love, then you're going to wake up from that dream. It's just a dream. No matter how real it seems, it's a dream, because only reality is God's will. Yet will one lily of forgiveness change the darkness into light, the altar to illusions, to the shrine of life itself. And peace will be restored forever to the holy minds which God created as His Son, His dwelling place, His joy, His love, completely His, completely one with Him. Wow, that is a beautiful reading. What is the ego? Okay, we want to know reality and not the god of sickness, not the god of death, and not the ego. We don't want to worship what is not real. We don't want to worship an idol. Fear binds the world. Forgiveness sets it free. Fear binds the world. Forgiveness sets it free. The ego makes illusions. Truth undoes its evil dreams by shining them away. Truth never makes attack, it merely is, and by its presence is the mind recalled from fantasies, awakening to the real. Forgiveness bids this presence enter in and take its rightful place within the mind. Forgiveness, recognizing what is not real, is still not real. That's what forgiveness is. No matter how much you want to give your attention to it, it's simply a worshiping of an idol. And we're going to practice forgiveness and break those chains. Fear binds the world. Forgiveness sets it free. Forgiveness bids this presence enter in and take its rightful place within the mind. Without forgiveness is the mind in chains, believing in its own futility. It seems so real, knock on wood. I mean, it seems so real. How could I be dreaming this? Well, if it doesn't speak of love, you are dreaming it. Don't worship the god of illusion, the god of sickness, the god of the ego, the god of death. Forgiveness bids this presence enter in and take its rightful place within the mind. Without forgiveness is the mind in chains, believing in its own futility. Yet with forgiveness does the light shine through the dream of darkness, offering it hope and giving it the means to realize the freedom that is its inheritance. And the prayer for fear binds the world, forgiveness sets it free. We would not bind the world again today. Fear holds it prisoner, and yet your love has given us the means to set it free. Father, we would release it now, for as we offer freedom, it is given us, and we would not remain as prisoners while you hold out our freedom unto us. Fear binds the world. Forgiveness sets it free. Fear binds the world. Forgiveness sets it free.